Hi dear students, today we will discuss chapter number 15 of kinesiology, that is muscle strength. Introduction. Active movement of the skeleton is brought about by the contraction of the voluntary muscles. This muscle tissue has contractile properties which are activated by the nerve impulses to supply the effort required to move or stabilize the body levers. Structure features. The structural unit of the voluntary skeletal muscle is the muscle fiber, large extrafield, which is cylindrical in form and averages from 20 to 40 millimeters in length and 1 by 10 to 1 by 100 of a millimeter in diameter. It is enclosed in an elastic sheath called the sarcolemma, the fine transparent tubular sheath which envelops the fibers of the skeletal muscles. Nature of the fibers. Some fibers appear red due to rich blood supply and the presence of a pigment called the myoglobin. Their contraction in response to stimulation is slow but can be sustained for a considerable time without fatigue. This type of the fiber therefore predominates in the anti-gravity muscles which are primarily concerned with the maintenance of posture, for example soleus. Other fibers, paler in color, called white, have low content of myoglobin, respond rapidly to the stimulation but are easily fatigued. These form the greater part of the muscles which are primarily responsible for movement, for example gastrocnemius. Myoglobin, basically it is red color protein that binds oxygen in the muscle fibers. Muscle fibers lying paired to each other are grouped together and surrounded by the connective tissue to form bundles, and many bundles are bonded together by the dense connective tissue to form the substance of a muscles. Muscles are attached to both extremities to the bone, cartilage or fascia by the fibrous tissue which is continuous with the connective tissue investing the muscle. This fibrous tissue contains elastic non-conductile elements and may be concentrated to form a narrow cord or spread out to form an aponeurosis, a sheath of purely white fibrous tissue that takes the place of a tendon in flat muscles having wide area of attachment. The more proximal of these attachment, which usually remains relatively fixed when the muscle contract, is known as origin, to distinguish it from the insertion, which is the attachment and which the power of the contraction is concentrated to produce movement of the body levers. Either attachments may be free to move towards the center of the muscles or the insertion may remain relatively fixed and the structure of the origin moved, in which case the muscle is said to work with reverse origin and insertion, because in this case the structure of the origin moved and insertion may remain relatively fixed. Fibrous connective tissue, which is composed of parallel bundles of collagen fiber, is found in dermis, tendon and ligaments. The form of the muscles varies according to its functions. A wide range and speed of the movement is produced by the contraction of the long fusiform muscles. Fusiform muscles are basically wider and cylindrically shaped in the center and tapered off at the ends. This overall shape of the fusiform muscles is often referred to as a spindle, in which the fibers are relatively parallel to or incised with each other and tendon of attachment. By this arrangement, the number of the muscle fibers included is relatively few and limited by the length of the muscles, with the result that no greater power can be exerted, as the power of the muscle contraction is directly proportional to the number of the fibers stimulated. The number of fibers is much increased in the case of the muscle designed primarily for the powerful contraction by the inclusion of the fibers arranged obliquely or at right angles through the line of the pole of the muscle as a whole. The force of contraction are compounded at point of attachment, but the range of movement is obviously limited. Look at this arrangement of the fascicles. Range of motion depends upon the length of the muscle fibers. Long fibers, large range of motion. Examples, pal and fusiform muscles. Power depends upon the total number of the muscle fibers. Many fibers, then greater power. Convergent, pinnate, bipinnate and multipinnate. These are basically related to power. Nerve supply of the muscles. Muscles are supplied by the nerves which contain both motor and sensitive fibers. Each motor fiber has a cell in the anterior horn cell of the spinal cord and the nucleus of the cranial nerve, which can be influenced from a variety of the sources The fiber axon of this lower motor neuron divides on reaching the muscles into from 5 to 150 branches. Each of it terminates in a motor end plate beneath the sarcolemma of muscle fiber. The group of the muscle fiber which is supplied by the division of a single nerve fiber is called motor unit, as impulses conveyed by the nerve fiber will affect them all simultaneously. A muscle fiber is capable of only one response to stimulation, that of maximum contraction. It is therefore the number of the motor unit utilized at any one time which determines the intensity or speed of the contraction as a whole. Cranial nerve nucleus is basically a collection of the neurons in the brain stem that is associated with one or more cranial nerves. Axons carrying information to and from the cranial nerves form a synapse first at these nuclei. Sensory receptors, which record the tension of the passive stretching, the degree of the contraction, pain and deep pressure upon in the muscles and tendon, and impulses recording these are conveyed to the central nervous system. Receptors sensitive to stretching of the muscles are component part of the muscle spindles which lie between parallel to its fibers. Stimulation of these sensory receptors results in flex, contraction or relaxation of a particular group of the muscles. Other components of the spindle are the small intraepithelial fibers, the sustained contraction of which is considered to be responsible for muscle tone, upon which the contraction of the large extraepithelial fibers responsible for the voluntary movement is superimposed. These are extraepithelial fibers and these are the intraepithelial fibers. The function of the spindles and their nervous connections also serves to increase the efficiency of the motor unit activity. Sensory fibers from these receptors in the joint and fibrous tissue which surround them travel in the same nerves which supply the muscles which pass over the joints, and inflex contraction of these muscles in case of strain is an important factor in preventing joint injury. Muscle fiber types. Muscle fiber types: type 1, type 2A and then type 2B. Type 1, slow twitch muscle fibers used for long distances, endurance activities and low fatigue rate. Type 2A, fast twitch, moderate distances, moderate fatigue rate. Type 2B, fast twitch, glycolytic, short distances, high intensities, high or quick fatigue rate. This is a muscle fiber types comparison table. Characteristics nomenclature, look at this. Type 1, slow, red, fatigue resistance, oxidative, and type 2A, fast, white, fatigue resistance, oxidative and glycolytic. Type 2B, fast, white, fatigable, glycolytic. Capillary density, type 1 high, type 2A intermediate, and this type 2B low. Mitochondrial density high in type 1, high in type 2A and low in type 2B. Oxidative capacity high in type 1 and type 2A and then low in type 2B. Glycolytic capacity low in type 1 and high in type 2A and type 2B. Activity used for type 1 aerobic long term, type 2A aerobic short term, and type 2B anaerobic short term. Force production in type 1 low, type 2A high and type 2B very high. Major storage fuel in type 1 triglycerides, in type 2A glycogen and type 2B glycogen. Type of muscle work. There is a change in the length of the muscles when it works to produce movement in opposition to external force, and it works to resist movement produced by an external force which gradually overcome it. When the attachment of the muscles are drawn towards the center of that muscles, it works concentrically, that means towards the center, or in shortening. When the attachments are drawn away from the center as its resistance is overcome by the external force, the muscle works eccentrically away from the center or in lengthening. There is no alteration in the length of the muscles which works to stabilize a joint, the power of its contraction being exactly equal and opposite to the forces which oppose it. In this case, the attachment of the muscles remains stationary and is said to work statically. Now we will discuss in detail this type of the muscle works. Isotonic. muscle work is further divided into concentric and eccentric muscle work. Concentric muscle work. Muscle working concentrically become shorter and thicker as their attachments are drawn close together and joint movements results. A patient doing concentric muscle work performs a movement and in doing so overcomes some force which offers resistance such as friction, gravity, manual pressure by the physiotherapist or some form of the mechanical resistance. Physiological cost of this type of muscle work is high as only about a quarter of energy liberated during contraction is available as mechanical work. Some is used to overcome the initial inertia and some is converted into heat. Concentric muscle work is used to build up muscle power, and although the most everyday movements involve the use of all type of the muscle work, it is more natural because least concentration to use the concentric type. For example, when lifting a heavy weight, a concentric contraction of the bicep would cause the arm to bend at the elbow. Eccentric muscle work. Muscle working eccentrically becomes longer and thinner as they pay out and allow their attachment to be drawn apart by the force producing the movement. Physiological cost of this type of muscle work is low, probably only about a quarter of that required for concentric work. Therefore, muscle recovering from paralysis may sometimes be persuaded to contract to resist before it will attempt to produce movement. Considerable concentration is required during exercise designed to work the muscles in this way because physiological cost of this type of muscle work is very low. This probably to control the speed of the movements as eccentric work in nature movement is usually fairly rapid and eccentric contraction results in the elongation of the muscles while the muscle is still generating force. Resistance is greater than the force generated and eccentric contraction can be both voluntary and involuntary. Static or isometric muscle work. In this case, length of the muscle remains the same throughout the contraction and no movement results. Static muscle work is more economical than either of the previous types but is fatiguing if sustained probably because of the hindrance to the circulation to the muscles as a result of increase in the intramuscular tension. Intermittent static contraction are used in the treatment of the weak muscles or when joint is immobilized to maintain the tone of the muscles passing over it. Voluntary static contraction of the posture muscles are used to train the pattern of the good posture. Posture is maintained by the contraction which are sometimes similar but are not fatiguing because of the low metabolic rate at which the muscle fibers used to contract and the special nature of their flex control. Isometric contraction are frequently used to maintain posture, common in the muscles of the hand and forearm responsible for the grip. Now we will discuss ranges of the muscle work. Basically, range of the muscle work is the extent of the muscle contraction which result in joint movement. Further divide in full range, then outer, middle and then inner range. Look at this. This is, you can say, full range and middle range. It is middle range for both bicep and tricep muscle. Inner range. This is the inner range for bicep but it is the outer range for tricep. This is the inner range for tricep but it is the outer range from bicep. Now we discuss these ranges further in detail. Full range. The joint is moved as the muscle work from the position in which they are fully stacked to the position in which they are fully contracted concentrically or from the position of the full contraction to the position of maximum extension if they are working eccentrically. Under ordinary circumstances, muscles are rarely required to work in full range but in emergencies they may have to maintain joint mobility, engage circulation, prepare for situations when power and mobility is needed. Inner range. The muscle works either concentrically from a position in which it is partially contracted, approximately halfway between the limits of the full range to a position of full contraction, or vice versa if it works eccentrically. Uses: gain or maintain joint movement in the direction of the muscle ball, train some extensors that stabilize joint, for example knee, vastus medialis obliquus strengthening. Outer range. The muscle work concentrically from the position in which they are fully stacked to position in which they are partially contracted or vice versa if the working eccentrically. Work in this range is used to strengthen muscles. Uses: Very useful for initiation of contraction. Flex acts better. Muscle contract more forcefully. Flanks turning raw. Middle range. In this case, muscles are neither fully stretched nor fully contracted. This is the range in which muscles are most often used in everyday life and in which, generally speaking, they are more efficient. Exercise in this range maintain muscle tone and normal power, but full joint movement is never achieved. Basically, uses maintenance of muscle tone and normal power. Group action of muscles. What is group action of muscle? Muscle basically don't work singly but in groups, and is the homogeneous working together of the several groups which result in coordinated movements. Prime movers are agonists, are the group of the muscle which bring about the movement by their contraction. Antagonists, which are the opposing group, relax and lengthen progressively so that movement is controlled but not impeded. Synergists are the muscles which work or relax to modify the action of the prime movers. They may alter the direction of the pull, or in the case of the prime movers, which pass over more than one joint, they fix or move the joints in which the main action is not required into the position which is most advantageous. Fixators are the number of the muscles which work to steady the origin of the prime movers are the synergists. Look at this example. In flexion of the fingers, as in making a fist, the flexors of the fingers work as prime movers to perform the movement. Antagonists, extensors of the fingers relax. The extensors of wrist work as synergists to fix or move the wrist into full extension so that power of the flexor of the fingers, which can also flex this joint, is not diverted for this purpose, but in case as the extended wrist joint act as a fulcrum for their action. The appropriate impulses for contraction or relaxation are conveyed to the muscles concerned at a particular moment from the central nervous system, as it's the movement and not the individual muscle, even muscle groups which are presented in the cerebral cortex. The importance of concentrating on the movement rather than on the contraction of a specific muscle in re-education cannot be overemphasized. Furthermore, as the movements which are represented as those to which the patient is accustomed, that is natural movements, these are prime importance. Now we discuss two joint muscles. Most group of the muscles include at least one which extends across more than one joint. These muscles are most effective in moving one joint when they are stacked over the other, as under these conditions the latter joint is used as a fulcrum and the stretching of the muscle acts as an additional stimulus to contraction. For example, rectus femoris, considered one of the quads, actually cross both the hip and knee joint and perform hip flexion and knee extension. It both lift and straighten your leg. Consider the gastrocnemius, a large calf muscle in the back of your lower leg. It crosses both the knee and ankle joints, so it performs both knee flexion, kicking yourself in the butt, and plant flexion, pointing your toes. To work the hamstring as flexors of the knees, the hip must be flexed by synergist action. Alternately, to work the hamstring as extensors of the hip, the knee must extend or to be extended during the movement of the hip extension. Group movements of the joints. Most natural movements involve the use of the series of the joints controlled by the integrated action of the many muscles. The control of these movements may be voluntary or unconscious, but in many instances it is the unconscious and reflexive in character and controlled from basal ganglion or the flex centers in the spinal cord. The basic pattern seems to be those of the thrust, withdrawal, swing and strike. In working, for example, plant flexion of the ankle joint and extension in the knee and hip result progressively in response to the firm pressure on the ball of the foot. But should there be pain in the foot as a result of injury or ill-fitting shoes, a flexion action is often imperfectly inhibited to produce a sagging posture and limping gait. Active and passive insufficiency. We will discuss this topic with examples. Now let's start. Muscle efficiency. If a muscle which crosses two or more joints produces simultaneous movements at all of the joints that it crosses, it soon reaches a length of which it no longer could generate a useful amount of tension. For example, the muscle cannot shorten beyond a certain limit without losing tension, and this is called active insufficiency. For example, maximum hip flexion with knee extension from a spine lying position. Passive insufficiency, when full range of movement at a joint or joints that the muscles cross is limited by the antagonist muscle length, it is called passive insufficiency. It is basically defined as follows: muscle cannot be stretched beyond certain limits without causing pain. For example, when persons tries to flex the hip fully with maximum knee extension, he usually feels pain in the hamstring muscles if he has tight hamstring muscle. This is passive insufficiency. When active insufficiency is present in one group of the muscles, this does not mean that opposite group of the muscle will suffer from passive insufficiency. So you can say in active insufficiency, the muscles cannot shorten beyond a certain limit without losing tension, and this is called active insufficiency. And when the muscles cannot be strong by certain limits without causing pain, this is passive insufficiency. An example of two joint muscles function at the elbow is the bicep brachii muscles. If it contracts and moves the elbow into flexion and forearm into supination while simultaneously moving the shoulder into flexion, it shortened to a point known as active insufficiency, where it can shorten no more. This is one end of its range. The muscle is lengthened full range by extending the elbow, pronating the forearm, and simultaneously extending the shoulders. When fully elongated, it is in a position known as passive insufficiency. Look at this. Passive insufficiency of the hamstring muscles. Hip flexion range of motion is limited by the length of the hamstring muscles when the knee joint is held in extension. Active insufficiency of the hamstring muscles. Knee flexion performed with the hip in extension results in a shortening of the hamstring muscles, that in turn decreases the ability of the hamstring to develop tension. This is abnormal passive insufficiency, and this is normal passive insufficiency. Passive insufficiency occurs with two joint muscles and refer to the fact that these muscles cannot stretch maximally across both joints at the same time. For example, hamstrings may limit hip flexion when the knee is full extension. However, if the knee is flexed passively, then the hip may be able to flex further because the stretch on the hamstring has been slacked. Active insufficiency, two joint muscles cannot contract maximally across both joints at the same time. Example, make a fist. Finger flexors. You can make a strong fist when your wrist is in a neutral or slightly extended position, but when you flex your wrist with a clenched fist, you lose some of the grip. This is because the finger flexors are unable to shorten any more than they have, and so begin to extend and lose grip strength. Thank you.